Hot off the heels of my latest review video on the Callisto Protocol, I'm back to talk about one of my personal favorite horror games of all time, Dead Space. Originally released back in 2008 by Visceral Games under EA, Dead Space finally got the Demon's Souls treatment. And by that, I mean that the 2023 release's faithfulness to its predecessor is incredibly spot on. The quality of life improvements and new takes on weaponry, story, allies, enemies, and environments is fantastic, and I'm excited to discuss more about those points in this video. If you're new, welcome to the channel. Today, I'll be going over pros and cons for visuals, gameplay, sound design, and story of course. Without further ado, let's jump into it. Previously, I had mentioned that the beloved horror classic had gotten a graphical overhaul similar to the PS5 remake of the 2009 hit Demon's Souls. Every single aspect of the visual design was revamped. For example, the particle effects, texture models, anti-aliasing, and especially the lighting and shadows. This remake was built from the ground up on a new engine. Of course, the new team took notes from the original, but they did add in some of their own. Certain levels as we remembered them have changed quite a bit to help improve pacing and general architecture. And the neat thing is that the Ishimura is fully explorable front to back with no loading screens. Posters from around the ship are redesigned to be more inclusive of people from all walks of life, and even the cast of characters themselves have been redone using facial captures to closely match their voice actors. You know how you envision how one of your favorite games from the past looks versus how it actually looks? That's what I thought here. In my mind, the original had the visuals that I would dare say rivals that of modern day gaming, and to a degree that's still true, but when I saw the comparison between the two, it was like night and day. Firing from weapons produces a trio of pounding shots, decimating explosion, or a line of red hot flames. Limbs from enemies seem to melt off as you blast away at them. Gore is juicy and disturbing, and the dim hallways and neon signs build a sense of futuristic dread like no other. I am very impressed with how sharp and clean all the textures and special effects look, but one qualm I do have is with the render times. Quite often throughout the game, I would see multiple items pop out of thin air, doors, bodies, and sometimes even characters themselves. I guess the newer engine still has trouble with people that move through the levels too quickly, so when they get to a checkpoint, the game is still bringing things in. It was jarring at times, but it didn't really hurt the game's progression any. I will drop a nice 8.5 out of 10 on this category, and ever so slightly misses the mark of perfection. The original Dead Space took inspiration from Resident Evil 4, as was stated by the director of Visceral Games at the time, Glenn Schofield. But instead of the slightly tanky controls, they allowed for full omnidirectional strafing, but they kept the aim to reload feature. In later games, the movement and combat was modernized, adding the use of kinetic impalement and consecutive stomps, as well as omni movement in zero gravity. All of these changes were brought into Dead Space 1's atmosphere and make the game very fluid to play. You can now use kinesis to launch sharp or pointed items at necromorphs. However, one thing I did notice was that the registration for which item would be selected and brought to you was inconsistent. Sometimes, after an enemy would break through a vent, I'd attempt to grab the fan that fell off, but instead I'd grab 90 other boxes in the room before I did that. This made combat more difficult than it should have. Stasis returns in its classic fashion. Not much has changed other than what I believe to be a few more upgrades to your suit to change its capacity, area of effect, and duration. You can also stomp and swing to your heart's content, with Isaac even cursing as he does it, similar to how he would have in Dead Space 2 and 3. His stomps work fine, but the swings have trouble connecting most of the time, in my experience. Speaking of connecting, I'd also noticed that the first gun that you get in the game, the plasma cutter, has some hit registration issues. There were moments where I'd be centered on an enemy's leg and the shot seems to pass right through, despite the middle of the reticle being dead on accurate. While on the topic of weapons, all weapons and upgrades have been fully redone. You must now locate several upgrade components for each gun in order to fully unlock the entire upgrade path, making it so that you can't just upgrade all at once. Some weapons have been given alternate secondary fires, making them more viable. For example, the line cutter no longer has trip mines, but laser traps that remain on and create an offensive barrier. They'll also be located in areas different to where they were in the original game, more spread out through the chapters to help pace your abilities and keep gameplay fresh. In order to get some of these weapons, you'll need specific security access, which is a new feature in the remake. You start from level 1 security clearance and throughout the game make your way up to master override clearance. The puzzles and minigames from the 2008 release have been tuned up, making them less frustrating and overall quicker to complete, so you can get back to the fun stuff. As mentioned earlier, you can explore the ship from front to back at any time via unlocked tram stations, in case you missed an item or just want to explore. And the new intensity director created for the remake will keep you on your toes while doing so, as there is a constant flow of enemies everywhere you go, depending on the area of course. A new enemy that joined the ranks is the Spitter, the necromorph that hurls acid at you, and an update to the military necromorphs that make it so that they have a stasis core on their chest that you can shoot, effectively slowing them down long enough to dismember them and making them a little less difficult than they were previously. Speaking of, the difficulty has also been reworked. In specific, Impossible mode is no longer just hard but with less resources, but instead a permadeath mode. You can save as many times as you want, but death prompts a restart of the entire game, which I'm excited to try my hand at, as they give you rewards such as the sleek new silver suit with a red visor and the classic finger gun. Gameplay was amazing and I had a blast with it, so I'll give it a rating of 8.5 out of 10. Excellent, but with a few imperfections that make important parts difficult sometimes. Playing alone at night has never been better with the crisp audio Dead Space delivers. Voice acting has been re-recorded with a few new voice actors, most notably Isaac. In the original, he was just a robot with no say in the matter, and in later games was adapted to speak. That same actor from later games returns to breathe some fresh air into DS1's Isaac. Now, he'll interject during arguments, provide meaningful technical analysis, and even curse when he runs out of ammo or is stomping out a necromorph. Sound effects are as iconic as they were before, with some of the original sounds like entering the shop, unfolding the bench, and opening doors making a reprise. Music is eerie and unsettling, and of course helps set the tone for wandering around the haunting Ishimura. Weapons and equipment have also gotten some adjustments, although the most notable one I have a nitpick against is the plasma cutter. The original used to pack a punch in its shots. Here it seems lighter, softer even, but other than that, they're all very solid pieces in terms of sound, especially the kinesis and stasis. Enemies also seem to have changed. Necromorphs used to seemingly laugh at you, which personally felt scarier. Now they just sound a bit more like generic monsters. I love the sound design in this game, but it looks to me like they put more time and effort towards the story and gameplay than sound came afterwards. Audio was amazing, but it didn't have as much growth as other portions of the game. Now I know I've been making comparisons the whole time, but if you've played the original, there isn't a whole lot that's different in the remake. But in the interest of giving you a gist of the situation, I'll do a spoiler-free opening. You are Isaac Clarke, an intelligent CEC engineer with an impressive career on his way to help repair the USG Ishimura after receiving a distress call, along with the main crew of Kendra Daniels and Zach Hammond. Hoping to feed two birds with one scone, he plans to fix the ship and meet up with his girlfriend Nicole Brennan, who's stationed aboard the ship. Communications are blacked out, so you get no word from the ship upon approach. Then suddenly you're pelted with asteroids and forced to make a crash landing. The madness ensues from then on. Veterans can rejoice, as Kendra is no longer as annoying as she once was, but is now a credible character with valid goals and convictions. Hammond has changed as well, being a little bit more friendly than his stoic past self. I really liked what they did to switch up some plot twists in the game, and the fact that they included an alternate ending as well. It was very well done and was very refreshing to see some previous plot holes covered up to have certain moments make more sense. The game is incredibly entertaining, and the added dialogue from Isaac's end changes everything. Story gets a 9 out of 10. Fantastic writing, the exception of one scene after a boss that felt out of place and quite frankly a little cringe. Dead Space is going to get a glowing 8.5 out of 10. It's stunning in every way, but there are a few unrefined aspects that made me take points off. If there's anything I left out, please feel free to yell at me in the comments. And if you did in fact enjoy the video, then I'd greatly appreciate if you could hit like and subscribe with the bell on for notifications. Love you guys, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.